Messi. Oh, what a goal it is!
Hello, this is Gian Chansrichawla from Thailand, and you're listening to the Bola Bola Show.
Hey everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Bola Bola Show. As usual with me today, I have my two buddies, Bala and Sivan. So how's it going for you, Bala?
All is good here, Alvin. I hope same with you. And how about you, Sivan? Everything's fine with you?
Yep, everything's going well. So pretty much all status quo, normal, lockdown, staying at home, working from home. But, as always, we have plenty of football to talk about. And this week, we're going up north to our neighboring country, Thailand. And for that, we have a guest on our show by the name of Gian. So welcome to the show, Gian.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, all right.
Hey Gian, yeah, welcome on board. So Gian, maybe you want to explain a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, so I'm live in Thailand, born here, big fan of football, and I've been working as a sort of a journalist in Thai football since maybe 2016, 2017, and I just like to write about stuff. I work for Football Tribe currently, and I write independently for a bunch of different, various fan sites and stuff.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and as to all our listeners, as you can understand now that today's episode is going to be about Thai football. So basically, the Malaysian Thai football rivalry, unlike Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand's rivalry with Malaysia is often regarded as a pretty cool rivalry, far less intense compared to Singapore, Indonesia, where the fans seem to be, a bit more cheerful, so to speak, as compared to the full-on intensity, in particular, with like the Derby Nusantara with Indonesia. Perhaps many factors plays its parts in this rivalry as well. Could be factors outside of football that might heat things up. But in the case of Thailand, we pretty much seem to enjoy at least the comfort of each other. So we can summarize it as a kind of a friendly rivalry. And in fact, for Malaysia, Malaysia has remained undefeated to Thailand in the last 4 meetings, actually, stretching back 6 years, which included, that 3-2 bittersweet win in the AFF Suzuki Cup final, where Thailand eventually won on aggregate. So I mean that's how the rivalry has been going on so far. So let's start with Gian. So what's your take on this rivalry, and what's your most memorable match for Malaysia versus Thailand?
I think it's quite an interesting rivalry. The games always turn out to be pretty fun. Both teams like to play attacking football. Maybe not so much under our past coach, I'm sure we'll come to, but for a lot of our time, with us with Zico and with you guys with Tan Cheng Ho, you guys like to attack. I think it's good to watch these games. They're often very high intensity. And yeah, I think it's a lot more friendly than some other rivalries. I think, for example, on our end, I think Thailand's rivalry with Vietnam is a lot more intense. But with Malaysia, it's more friendly. And even though it's friendly, I think the atmosphere at the grounds really helped. At the Ratchamangala, and at the your guys' end, of course, the famous atmosphere that you guys have in Malaysia. I think that often helps it. So I think it's one of the more exciting games to watch, and it's a really great rivalry.
Yeah, and what was there any particular match that stood out for you, Gian?
So I started getting into Thai football around 2014, 2015. So I think those dates already give you an idea. It's the second leg of the final between Malaysia and Thailand in the 2014 AFF Cup. I remember I actually did not watch the full game, but I tuned it about halftime, and I wasn't big into it back then. And I saw that you guys were winning. I'm like, oh, I guess we've lost that one. And then suddenly having a turnaround in the last 10 minutes was quite, incredible. And I remember that even though my family isn't big into Thai football, we were all celebrating quite a bit because it was, a remarkable team, and that team would go on to achieve quite a lot. And I think if you speak to a lot of players, so I've spoken to a lot of players, like, for example, Charil Shapui, who scored in that game, and he said it was his favorite game of all time to have ever played it. So a lot of the players that are involved in that also say it was their favorite game ever.
Okay. So what about you guys? What about Bala?
I think would not call rivalry with Thailand, because I think Thailand people are generally very nice, very humble and very friendly, to say. With my experience with them, so I think that makes even a footballing game is more on like a friendly kind of game. You see, basically it's best of the best team. So I think that's perhaps why Malaysian especially are able to play with each other more and more, despite the stakes, whatever stakes, especially recently with the World Cup qualifying. So if you ask me, I think I would say recently Malaysia won 2-1 in the National Stadium, Malaysia. So I think Thailand was leading the group. And with Malaysia beating Thailand, I think basically it's open up the entire group, whereby I think the UAE, Malaysia, and also Thailand stand a chance to.
Okay.
Okay. And what about you, Sivan? What do you most recall about these Malaysia-Thailand matches?
Okay, I mean, I've been watching Malaysia versus Thai for maybe more than 20 over years. First time I remember, the first full game that I watched was the 96 Suzuki Cup, in which, of course, Thailand won 1-0, goal scored by none other than Changsuek Zico Sunamong. But of course, if you ask me, the one that I would probably remember the most is definitely there are two games. That final in Bukit Jalil, where we won 3-2, but nevertheless, we still didn't win the FF Suzuki Cup that particular year. It's one hell of a game. And of course, one cannot forget Shafiq Rahim's fantastic free kick, which even got itself an article of its own on the FIFA website. You can go check that out. And of course, the recent win against Thailand. Another wonderful build-up goal scored by Brendan Gunn. So these two, I think, are the most outstanding ones for me. And of course, speaking of the man himself, Zico Sinamon. I mean, when he took over the job as the head coach of Thai football, the national team, they were on a rise. There was a lot of promise, about how far Thailand national team can go. And I think there was a sense of camaraderie among the players, everyone in the dressing room, like they all really work hard for each other. But the moment he stepped down, I've sort of seen a trend whereby Thailand have not looked so dominant as they used to be. In fact, they can't look regress. They didn't win the 2018 AFF Suzuki Cup. They didn't make any impact in the AFC Asian Cup, which was, I was expecting so much from them. I mean, what's your take on this, Gian? I mean, do you kind of agree with where I'm coming from here?
In a sense, I don't really agree. I think that we are currently under Akira Nishino as the current manager. I think we are as strong as we've ever been in recent times, I think, honestly. But of course, we were in decline for a short amount of time under Rayovac. But here's a hot take that I have. I don't think it's very popular among Thai fans, but I think that the way we were going, Zico's departure, in a sense, was inevitable. Now, when it happened at the time, I was outraged like anybody else. I was super upset. I really missed him for the first, year or so that he was gone. We were all really angry that they had sacked him. And at the time, it seemed like a personal, personal move from the president of the FA. But I think that the realization, I don't think that we had this at the time, but looking back on it now, we can say in hindsight that the way we were playing football, the attacking football, was great for dominating Southeast Asia, but it wasn't so good for playing against the bigger teams in Asia. So, for example, Zico's last game was a 4-0 loss to Japan, which shows exactly that he couldn't take the attacking, sort of tiki-taka-esque football and transform that into something else, which is better suited to playing against the very strong teams like Japan and the other top teams in Asia. So I think that the struggles we had under Rayovac, where we regressed a little bit, I'm going to consider those to be necessary growing pains that Thailand had. And we had to go through them to change our direction. But now we've done that, we've gone through that. And I think that this current U23 group that you saw at the AFC U23 Championships in Thailand, when they come through and if they have Nishino as their coach, I think they can come back to dominating Southeast Asia once again.
Okay.
But I remember also Zico did mention after winning the AFF Cup, the AFF Cup he was stating that Southeast Asian team supposed to look beyond the SEA Games, Suzuki Cup, because I think that's the way we can expand our potential. But I think he had a stint in Europe, namely to Huddersfield. Sivan, I think it's your favorite club. Can you say more about this?
Well,
Or
yeah,
this
I mean,
experience during in Huddersfield?
well, yes, Zico spent, I think, about a season in Huddersfield Town, I think back in 2000, 2001. He didn't necessarily feature with the first team. It was mainly with the reserve side. And I think it was a give and take signing because the manager at the time, Steve Bruce, wasn't really, he wasn't really keen on this signing. He didn't necessarily agree to it. He felt it was more like a marketing plot rather than anything to do with football. But I think Zico endeared himself. He became a cult figure. I think, remember, he scored a hat trick in one of the reserve game. I would say he took a lot more in terms of maybe the experience, the exposure from that time playing for Huddersfield back when he came back to Southeast Asia. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's always a nice take on it when you have a player from an exotic country playing for a very traditional English football club. Yeah, that's just my view on that.
Okay, great. Okay, and let's go back in time a bit to the 90s. The 90s where Thai Farmers Bank, were the most dominant side in Thai football. Winning back-to-back champions of Asia. This was certainly a memorable growing up moment for us. As for me in particular, I can remember every Friday. Because we guys used to go to school. We were in the, morning session, and then used to come back home, have our lunch, and at 2:30 p.m. on TV3 in Malaysia, we used to have the Asian football show, and that's where we got to see Thai Farmers Bank and all their dominance and all the highlights of all their matches. So Steven, I'm sure you can resonate well with this show, and the good old days, and of course a particular superstar from this era.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was one of those shows that I wouldn't want to miss it for the world. And believe it or not, we don't really, we get a lot of football stuff from England. So anything outside of England, it's something we cherish a lot. And having a 1 hour Asian football show itself was a very valuable lesson. We learned so much about all these other countries in our continents, what amazing things they have. And of course, to know a club like Thai Farmers Bank winning back-to-back champions of Asia was truly remarkable. Even though, the format at that time, the circumstance at that time was far different than what it is today. But nevertheless, it was perhaps my first education of Thai football, knowing they had this golden boy by the name of Natipong Sritong In, and then there was this if you remember this giant defender by the name of Waterwood Sri Maka Alwin. Very imposing guy at the center back. I'm not sure if Katusuk was part of that side, but these two names is something I will always remember back then.
And Sri Maka was also well known for his goal scoring prowess, being a centre back as well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I suppose when you think of Asian physics, you rarely get someone that tall. Because Thai Farmers can capitalize on that and set pieces or something. Yep. But that was a different time. And then of course moving on, as we know that today in the modern era, the Thai Football League is by far one of the most exciting league, not just in Southeast Asia, but in Asia as a whole. So I think you might have some questions on that.
Yeah, I think the league was integrated in 2007, and then prior to that, they had one league for teams in the Greater Metropolitan Bangkok, and another league team for the province. I think Thailand, basically, if you're not mistaken, the grassroots level is huge. I think similar to Malaysia, whereby I think the number one sport is football, and there's a lot of passion and a lot of interesting fan base. But it's just interesting to know that actually Thai FA took some time to revamp the league. And approximately when the system wasn't enough to pull or to develop more talents. So what went wrong actually, Jen? Can you maybe perhaps elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so about the league's integration. So I think it was Chonburi and Suphanburi were the first teams to get promoted into the main Thai league that was mostly dominated by Bangkok teams before that. They were the first provincial teams to enter it. And in 2007, so Chonburi promoted with Suphanburi in 2006. And then in 2007, Chonburi went on to win the league, which I think totally changed everything. It changed the way that people viewed football. It made people realize that there was a lot of potential of making teams in the provinces that were supported by local people in the province. And I think to know why it wasn't integrated earlier, just look at the names of the different teams, right? So you had Thai Farmers Bank, Bangkok Bank, Krum Thai Bank, BEC Terro, Osat Spa. Those are all company clubs. And you also had government-run clubs. So the Army, the Port Authority, the Tobacco Monopoly, the Electrical Authority, they all owned clubs. And so the football club, as we imagine it, as a sort of staple of a set community, wasn't really a thing in Thailand. It wasn't the way it used to operate. I think that clubs like Chonburi and Suphanburi were the ones who pioneered the idea that a club is, should be built on being in a unique area with a unique and loyal and large growing fan base. And I think once they realized that the provinces have so much potential because of that, then it was a no-brainer to integrate. And as to why it didn't happen before, I don't know if I can't really answer that, except I can speculate about the current, the status quo of clubs at the time wanting to maintain the way it was run back then.
Okay. And of course, because of this integration, some teams were rebranded and then end up being relocated to another place. I think Buriram is a very good example. Did it have any effect on the fans that initially supported the club, the former club, when suddenly one day they realize, the team they're supporting is no longer, there for them, is going to be relocated to a different province altogether?
Yeah, so relocations are very common in Thai football, and in fact, they're still happening. So before the start of last season, Panyee United moved to become Samut Prakan City. And when that happened, Panyee United fans were left without a club to support. So some of them gave up on football altogether. Some of them supported another local club at the 4th division. Some of them continued to follow Samut Prakan even though they had moved. But the answer is that when a club relocates, there is no real answer for the fans. It's a really harmful experience for them. I think it's something that needs to stop. I support the idea of decentralizing the league, at least as it was initially, because all these clubs clustered in Bangkok wasn't necessarily healthy. So it's good that clubs were moving out to the provinces and engaging new fans into the game. And I want there to be as much provincial representation in the Thai league as possible. But the moves often, as we see by the ones recently where a club moves from one province to another, there's often not a lot of things the fans can do, and the fans are often an afterthought in these movements, and it prevents the club from building a long-lasting organic fan base in their community. So back then, maybe clubs moving out of Bangkok was good to bring in more fans, but currently it just seems like it's actually disenfranchising fans more than it's bringing them in.
Okay, yeah. Right. And another unique thing about Thai football is how, the team's owners take most of the spotlight, particularly Buriram, Muangthong and Port FC, far different in most places where the owner usually takes a back seat and, they let the manager run the club in terms of team selection or maybe even transfer policy and all that. So, how is it very different here in Thailand? Do these owners actually get involved in like setting up team formations and forcing it on the manager to make these decisions?
Yeah, so believe it or not, that does happen in a few clubs. This is one of the big things Thailand is known for, is very hands-on, very interventionist owners. And of course, like everything, there's degrees. There's clubs that owners don't interfere so much. So to take one end of the spectrum, you have Bangkok United, who don't interfere at all with the day-to-day running of the club, and they just support financially. And then at the other end, you have clubs like Buriram and Port, where you can see the owner sitting on the touchline. You can see the owner picking their favorites. For Buriram, for example, the owner Newin Chitchop always goes to the touchline before a substitute is made, and he'll put his arm around the player, and then he'll push him onto the field. And he calls the players his kids. All the young Buriram Academy players, he calls them his kids, and he's with them every day, and he's with them on the touchline, giving them encouragement before they go on, like a coach would do. So most clubs fall somewhere in the middle of that. And I think that we often highlight the extreme examples a lot in Thailand, so that gets in the news, but there are definitely clubs where the owner decides practically everything.
Okay. Let's talk about current issues. I think currently COVID-19 has disrupted the entire world of football. Be it Europe, be it South Africa, be it the rest of the world. I think Thailand also is not been escaped from this issue. Looking at current situation, when do you think realistically the league can resume? And then is there any discussion among the Thai football stakeholders for them to restart the league as soon as possible?
Yeah, so currently the plan is to restart in September. This is according to the Thai League Deputy CEO Benjamin Tan, who has decided that the Thai League will now run on a September to May schedule. And I see the benefits of it. I personally don't agree, but I see the benefits of moving to this type of schedule. Not only do we are allowed to wait, because currently in Thailand, the situation for COVID is getting better. I think our daily average has been like 2 cases for the past couple of weeks. So we've contained it very well and we're getting better. And some clubs already are looking at getting back into training. But the FA seems intent on not starting until September, and then from there on switching to a September to May calendar. So as for discussions between stakeholders, I'm not so sure. I think that some stakeholders benefit more than others from this move. I know some clubs like Muangthong, which we'll come on to very soon, I suppose, they have had to sell players because there are no revenue streams coming in right now. So they've had to sell players to make up for the fact that they're not making any money. I'm sure, many clubs in the lower divisions are struggling because of the lack of revenue streams coming in. But overall, in the long run, the September to May move could be beneficial. It might not be beneficial. We have to wait and see. But yeah, what we can say for sure is it's very unlikely that there'll be any football before September because the FA seems intent on doing that.
Okay. And the fact that you mentioned about Muangthong United, yeah, of course, recently one of their players, Saraj, I believe Saraj Yoyan, if that's how, if that's how you pronounce his name. Of course, he was linked with JDT. There were strong rumors going around, but apparently his agent denied it, and now it turns out that he's going to play for BG Patom. And apparently he's not the only player that is, heading on the exit door in Muangthong United. I mean, what's going on here? Is there some issues behind Muangthong that is leading to all this happening?
Yeah, so I actually just got an article published in the Asian Game Today website if you want more information on this. But to summarize very quickly, Muangthong have had a lot of troubles keeping up with the financial the financial arms race at the top of the Thai League. So a lot of clubs have owners which spend their own money in improving the club, and Muangthong rely on sponsorships. They rely on a massive sponsorship with SCG, who of course sponsor the club's name, stadium, the kits and everything. But of course there are other smaller sponsors as well. And I don't have any specific details on what has happened, but it seems pretty clear that money is no longer as abundant as it once was. So before the season started, we saw Tirasin leave to the JLeague to join Shimizu Espals. We saw Sharil Shapui and Brazilian striker Heberty move to join local rival Sport. Tiraton completed his permanent move to Yokohama F. Marinos, and now Sarat Yuyen is also on the way out. He was the last established Thai international in the team, and he was the last member. Him and Adison Promrak, who left maybe 2 days earlier, were the last two members of Muangthong's last title-winning team in 2016, and they were the last two established senior national team stars with the club. Now that they've gone, the club basically they have the youngest average age of any club in the Thai League currently, and they are going to basically be relying on their academy graduates because Muangthong have, in my opinion, arguably the strongest academy as well in the league. So they're going to be relying on that now because they realize we can't compete anymore for top players with the other big clubs around us. So maybe the best strategy now is to just try and be more sustainable and aim for the long run. So that's, I don't know how much of it is an intentional sort of plan to change their emphasis and how much of it is we have no choice but to play the young players, but that's the way Muangthong is going right now.
Okay. Talking about the leagues, basically Japan, I think, having the strongest league in Asia right now. Of course, they're having a big money power, especially signing like players of Andre Iniesta and David Villa in recent times. But also there is some trend whereby Thailand players, majority playing in the JLeague, seems to be a favorite destination. I think players like Chanatip Songkrasin, if I'm not mistaken, Kawin Tamsana, Terasil Dangwada, and also Tiranatong Bunmadan playing for Blokoma Marinos, One Renata. Is this anything, something particular whereby Japanese leagues favor Thailand player most?
I think that there's a sort of affinity for Japan among Thai players. I think they like playing, they like the style of football there. And I think that it's not as difficult a cultural adaptation as, say, going to Europe, for example. So it's a good way to mix high quality football with a more environment they can be more used to and adapt well to. And I think it's been great for Thailand to have these players playing over there because they've improved greatly. I think you see Chanatip and Tiraton, how much better they've gotten because of playing regularly in the JLeague. So it's great, and I hope more players consider Japan for the destination, and I hope more players consider other places too, like Korea, or maybe even trying to play in Europe. But for now, Japan is a very good destination for Thai players.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Gian. So let's talk about Panyee FC. We've been told that it's a very interesting team, but for the benefit of all our listeners out there, can you share with them some very interesting facts about this unique team?
Yeah, so I think I probably know as much about it as the average person. I've seen the ad. Basically the story is that these young Thai kids living on an island in the south of Thailand didn't have much sort of space to play football. Didn't have their own football pitch or anything, and the whole was a fishing village on the island, and they wanted to play football because they were watching football on TV and they loved the sport. Mm-hmm. So they made a tiny pitch of wood and nails and everything, and they played there. And one day they got invited to play in the mainland at a tournament. And as the story goes, and I've only seen the ad of them, the documentary of them, but the theory goes, because they're used to playing on the tiny pitch with the nails and the harsh conditions and the water, that it was easy playing on a real pitch, even if it was raining or whatever. The conditions on the real pitch were so much easier for them than what they'd been playing on earlier. So they played really well, and they became a very strong team. And from what I understand, they're still a youth team today in Southern Thailand. They're not a professional club, but they are a youth team. And I think they're renowned all over the world because of how much that story talks about the passion of football and the various people.
So these guys, they still train on that floating pitch on the sea there for their youth team as well?
I don't know, but I doubt that's the case. I mean, from the documentary, they had a better pitch than they did at the beginning, but I don't know I don't know how it is currently. I don't know. I only know from that video.
Yeah. Because I think maybe Steven and Bala can understand this. So imagine like when we guys were playing football in the field, and every time the ball goes into the pit, because there was this huge drain at the side of the field. Right, Gian? So when we used to play, and then the ball used to fly into the drain, and then somebody had to jump into the drain and pick up the ball. So for this case, I can imagine like Panyee, the ball going into the sea, and somebody having to jump into the sea to get the ball. Yeah.
I think a lot of cultures everywhere, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if I may add furthermore on that, I think the team they're still playing on that floating pitch because I think it was last year I watched a Netflix documentary about this father and son whereby they were on a tour in Asia, and they actually went to that floating pitch and played a game. So, I think this is something that we guys might have put in our bucket list one day. Go and, just have a kick about there just for the experience of it.
Yeah.
Well, from pitch to fans, I think talking about football fans, I think each fan, each nation having their unique experience and unique style. We have seen how the fans react in Indonesia and even now Malaysia, and not mention what's happening in South America. If you may tell us how the fan culture in Thailand, and what features expose? Okay, this is the guy from Thailand, or this is Thai tradition. Is there anything about it in terms of the culture-wise?
So for a start, I should say it might be a bit tough to answer this question as well as as I would like, because a lot of things that are Thailand-specific culture, I would just find them to be normal. I think, that's football, that's normal, that's what happens. So I'm sure there's some things that I miss, some sort of fine details that I miss because I don't consider them and take them as unique cultural things. But I think that the main thing that you'll see is that fans are very friendly and welcoming. So unlike in other places, there's, when away fans go to different stadiums, they'll often be greeted very warmly by the home supporters. Oftentimes, when an away team comes and plays, the home fans will even chant the name of the away team after the game to show them respect and to show them the welcome and to thank them for the good game. Everywhere you go around Thailand, it's mostly very welcoming fans. And as for like the fans themselves, they tend to be at most clubs, some more than others, but they tend to be like people who will lead the cheers. Like they will stand at the base of the terrace, and they will be leading the other fans and be playing drums and things like that. Which is I guess it's seen all over Southeast Asia, but it's unique because I don't think it really happens in Europe as much. But yeah, I think between that and how welcoming the fans are compared to other places make Thai football experiences pretty unique.
How about the ultras? Are they like bringing all the bands, all the drums, or is it more like a festival kind of a game?
Yeah, it depends where you go, because I think at most clubs I've gone to, there's an ultra section. They bring drums, they bring instruments, and they often are very loud throughout the entire game. And no matter what happens, if it's raining or anything, the ultra fans will keep on cheering throughout the entire game. And I think the average fan that's just watching isn't necessarily, unless you go to some certain grounds like Port or Buriram, like the average fan isn't sort of yelling all the time, but the ultras are always very lively.
Okay, interesting. And Sivan, you have experienced attending a Thai league fixture. Maybe you want to share with us out here, how was it?
Well, I would definitely concur everything that Jan said. It was really a friendly, fanfare, event the whole day. I remember when by the way, the game that I went to attend is between Muangthong United and Buriram, which is considered one of the biggest fixture in Thai football. I remember going on the afternoon to go and meet the guy who I think was in charge of the media by the name of Steve. And I could see the lineup. It wasn't like your average, type of football demographic where it's, more male. I think there's a good mixture of female audience, children as well. It was more like a family fan affair outside the stadium while people are queuing up to buy tickets. And I think that was pretty much the same thing that translated inside the stadium. Yeah, it was more like a family. It was more like a weekend affair for families to really go and watch football game in Thailand. It was very memorable. I was glad that I picked that fixture because it was such a memorable game where Muangthong came out on top 3-1, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, I also had the pleasure of being part of the media at the back end, seeing what's going on and during the press conference and all that. And that's where Jan and myself spent the most, and that's where we got to know each other. So yeah, if I have to give any advice, do make it a point. At some point, you'll have to go and attend one fixture in Thailand. It will be very memorable. Yeah.
All right, great. And in fact, the more I hear you guys speak about this Thai league fixture, it sounds something like something similar to what recently when we had Dan on the show speaking about the JLeague fixture as well. It's like a family affair. And you can bring your kid, your grandfather, and attend the game as well. A wide range of fans there, friendly and all that. So very interesting indeed. So guys, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, Jan, okay, what's your take on the future of Thai football? I think recently there was this discussion going around Twitter with, in case Elvin and Bala, basically it's Marco Negri who brought up this interesting discussion about Thai football opting to naturalize, foreign players, which, as Jan, I think you have tweeted that it's unlikely to happen because of the strict immigration policy. But what's your take on the future of Thai football? Do you think there is a possibility at some point, they might want to opt for foreign players because of certain aspects, maybe in terms of physiques or, technical abilities that maybe, a regular Thai player may not be able to match on the international level?
Yeah, so on naturalization, I think Thailand has very tough immigration laws in general, like for everybody, not for footballers. And I think it's pretty harsh. And it's one of the main things I disagree with of our, sort of political thing. I really hate how tough we are in immigration. I wish we were a more welcoming country in the legal sense, because we are in the cultural sense, but legally not so much. It's really, really hard for a foreign player to become a Thai citizen and represent Thailand. And I have my own podcast with my friends, and we were talking about naturalization a couple of episodes ago. And what I said was, I think that if someone's been in Thailand long enough and qualifies legally to play for Thailand, I would love it to see them play for Thailand. And I think that nations and sort of national pride and patriotism it's all imaginary, right? Like nations are all figments of our imagination at the end of the day. So if a player really feels a strong feeling towards Thailand, no matter where they were born, if they have been here long enough, legally qualify through a not too strict system, I hope, but they legally qualify and they feel Thailand is their home, they should absolutely be able to play. But that being said, I don't think that going out and finding people just to fill certain positions in a national team through naturalization is the best idea. I think that footballers should be going through the same process as everybody else to get citizenship, which I wish was more lenient, but I wish that everybody goes through it the same way, because there are other people who want to be Thais and don't get the chance to because of the law. So I hope that I would hope that footballers go through the exact same process as everybody else. And I would like to see these players play. I think somebody like Heberty, who's been here forever, some other players like a guy named Birame Diouf, who I think he was from Ivory Coast. I'll go check on that, but he speaks fluent Thai. He's been here for so long. He speaks Thai fluently. A lot of people like that. I wish that they could play for Thailand. It would be great to see them play for Thailand, because they've been here so long and Thailand is their home. And everyone who thinks Thailand is their home should be able to play for Thailand. But I don't think we should go around and act like it's an international transfer window and try and find players to fill positions. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that part. Whatever said and done, the national team should be, the development should be on players who are born and bred in this country, rather than being, cherry picked somewhere from overseas. I think Elvin and Bala, I think you guys will agree on this, right?
Yeah, I think, it has to be a right balance there, and then not just go around grabbing whoever just to fill up positions and all this. And there are also lots of people who are actually, not even footballers, but there are lots of people out there who are actually waiting for a citizenship like for years and decades, and they can't even get it. And then not just to say now that you're a footballer and you can play and you can contribute a bit, you just get a free pass at a citizenship. Of course, if you're talented and all that, to me it's still there should be a balance, but I still would rather have a very strong youth development academy and all these coming up rather than getting naturalized talent. That's just my take on it.
But for me, I feel, of course, this program of youth and these players developing all this is very good. But I think currently, especially in Malaysia's stage, I think there's not much of talent, which can compete in the world of football. So it's kind of skeptical. I remember one of the countries, they during Olympics, they won a gold. I can't recall the runner. It's represented one of the Middle East country. UAE or Qatar, something like that.
I think it was. I think it was Qatar. Yeah.
So
it happens a lot in the Olympic Games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's still subjective. You ask me, because at the end of the day, the best team is qualified. It doesn't matter naturalized players or not, but you don't have the kind of pool to actually support the team. You see.
Yeah. I'm glad. To some extent, I'm glad that we sort of opened up the doors with Mamadou Soumaré. I think he's been a tremendous asset for Malaysia. I would rather say that we take a subtle approach rather than an aggressive approach. But yeah, definitely has to be a fine balance. Okay. All right. I
have a question for Jen.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
What do you think chances of Thailand qualifying for the next round of World Cup?
Next round of that's going to be. It all depends on how fit the players are because the COVID break has thrown everything into, completely disrepute. But it's going to be very tough. It's going to require you guys to make a few mess ups.
You have to get past. You have to get past Malaysia first.
Yeah, and okay, if we go result by result, I think that we can get the points against Indonesia at home. All right.
Don't forget, guys, Vietnam is unbeaten. No?
Yeah, that's the thing. Vietnam are so difficult, and the way they play is exactly the opposite of like the worst thing for Thailand is because they're so intense. You know, it's so hard to play against them. I'm not optimistic. I'm trying not to get my hopes up because I know they're going to get crushed. But I'm quietly optimistic. I think the squad is stronger than people think it is. I think it doesn't look as glamorous as the example of the 2014 AFF Cup team, but it's really strong. And I think that even if not this time, I think looking forward, we have a very strong young team coming up. I think Thailand could, if we do it right, the current under 23s group and it could achieve even more than we have in the past. So look to the future.
I think the last Thailand tour game is against UAE and also Malaysia. I think the UAE is playing away.
We have one more game against Indonesia at home, and then we have UAE away and then Malaysia home.
Okay.
So it all depends on that.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So, any last words, Gian?
Not much. Just thank you for having me on, and I hope that people listening who, support European football and things like that, give a chance to your local league. I think that for me, since I discovered the Thai league, growing up, I was supporting, watching the Premier League, but since I discovered the Thai league, it's made my football watching experience a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, and you feel a lot closer. So support your local team and enjoy it. That's all I can say.
Okay, true. Agree with you on that. So, guys, any last words?
Yeah. Bala, go ahead.
Thank you, Jen, for actually coming to our show and supporting us. It's very, very beautiful insight you told about Thailand football overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jan, for joining us on board here and having this fantastic discussion. Just for me, throughout my growing up years and all this, and when I look at the Thai national team, the only thing I think about is attacking football, because I never knew for me, all my time, I never knew Thailand was actually a very defensive team, but always a very enterprising and attacking team. Not a team who would park the bus and all that. And throughout those years, they have always been a very attacking team. So this is my impression I have on Thailand. Yeah.
That's good. That's what we want. That's the impression we want to give. Yeah.
Yeah, I will agree with Elwin. I mean, that's watching Thailand national team throughout these years. It's always an element of excitement the way they play on the field, and I think the same goes for Thai football fixture, Thai league fixture as well. Doesn't really get boring. It's very exciting to see two teams, take it on each other. Well, anyway, of course, thank you, Gian. Thank you so much for being in our show, giving us all this wonderful insight on Thailand football. And of course, I hope that hopefully we can have a podcast recording, say, for the next fixture between Malaysia and Thailand. I'm not too sure when that's going to take place, but when it does, we would like to have you on board with us. It'll be interesting as we talk about that game. I'm sure there's a lot at stake for both teams, and something which I'm sure we all are looking forward to. Okay, with that said, we will wrap up the show, and that's goodbye for now.